Hello and welcome to the Struggle Summer Special. Advanced Australia Fair gets an update, China and Australia tussle over trade and tariffs, and the perspective of social media without news. On the 1st of 2021, Scott Morrison made a small alteration to the national anthem from Young and Free to One and Free to better acknowledge the rich, extensive history of Aboriginal Australians. Now, despite some calling this move as a meaningless symbolic gesture, many are pleasantly surprised that Scott Morrison knew anything about Aboriginal history, considering some of his past comments. Unfortunately, though, memorizing the second verse of the national anthem remains as difficult as ever. But this move has been relatively well received, and to help other countries with facing similar issues, here comes our public relations manager, Suze.
Thanks, Tavleen. And while it's true that changing the lyrics to the national anthem doesn't do much to actually address systemic racism, it is a symbolic gesture. And many people forget that Scott Morrison is the king of symbolic gestures. And while many other countries are dealing with very similar issues to Australia, the Prime Minister has asked me to give advice to said countries about good old effective symbolic gestures. Firstly, India. Now, we understand that right now you guys are dealing with some protests about farmers' rights and anti-union policies. So you could seriously engage with and address these issues, or you could just do what we do when we have protests about our treatment of immigrants. Now, say the issue has been a moral burden that has made us cry and that's it. Do we really have to do anything about the issue? Of course not, but people will still appreciate the sympathetic shift in tone. Next, America. Now, we understand that in the wake of Trump, the Republican Party is more divided than ever, and that party leaders are trying very hard to unite this party again. So what we suggest is to do what ScoMo did with the Liberal Party when he took them to Albury to remind them of their roots. Organise a group field trip to Washington DC or something. Share some ice cream. Go nuts. Will it actually fix the deep-rooted ideological differences within the party? Of course not. But will it look like you're doing something? Absolutely. Finally, England. Now, we understand that you guys are kind of struggling with COVID right now. Look, we get it. We've been there. It sucks. But this is what you've got to do. Get your Prime Minister to go on national TV and tell everyone that you're praying for them. Like, really sell it. Tell them your prayer knees are getting a good workout this week. That should definitely fix everything. But not the virus, though. There's no fixing that. But it'll make it look like you're trying really hard. Isn't that all that matters? Well, that's all we've got for now. Hopefully you've seen just how important symbolic gestures are. And if you haven't seen the light yet, well, we're really praying for you. Back to you, Tavleen.
Amen, Suze. Now she must be saying something right in these tips of hers, because Scott Morrison notified about his holiday this year in contrast to his Hawaii trip during the Black Summer. While most of us are still grappling with this ever-evolving pandemic, there's another 2020 issue that's persisted in the new year, and that's the ongoing trade wars between Australia and China. Victims so far have included coal, barley, red meat, wine, and lobsters, and have been subjected to the unpleasant treatment of tariffs or bans. So to get more on this international crisis, we now cross to our social media influencer. Really?
That's right, Tavleen. And FYI, I'm very well versed in the nuanced complexities of the diplomatic quandary that is the Australia-China trade dispute. For instance, the recent spat over barley meant my biannual all-expenses-paid flight to Denpasar was cancelled. Sad reacts only. It also seems lobsters, like people, are struggling to cross international borders, with the beady-eyed crustaceans unable to clear customs in China. But in the spirit of positivity, mindfulness, and whatever other wellness buzzword I'm a paid ambassador for, let's take a look at the bright side of this stoush. Domestic lobster prices have recently plunged to levels of affordability, accessible to pretty much any budget, whether you're job keeping, job seeking, or job weeping. In fact, my Boxing Day savviness came a day early because for Christmas lunch, I served a lobster banquet. Stuffed the traditional chicken and turkey with the bisque and the mornay and the golden tails. Stomachs were filled, my guests adored me, and my hip pocket didn't even notice. Cheap lobster prices have meant I've been able to help out my local seafood industry, nourish my nearest and dearest, and prevent all those critters from going to waste. You could kind of say I'm the unsung hero in this trade war. Not that it's about me or anything. Anyway, I'm off to film a sponsored post for the Friends Not Food Society. Don't forget to like, follow and share, but in a COVID-safe way. Bye!
Foreign affairs reporting at its finest. Moving on now, and the news has been in the news of late. Or to be more specific, the News Media Bargaining Code has been in news. Designed to get the likes of Google, Facebook to pay for having news on their platforms. An idea that the internet juggernauts aren't exactly giving the thumbs up to. Google and Facebook believe they send a lot of traffic to news organizations' websites, and that is undervalued. Facebook has gone as far as to threaten to stop allowing publishers and people in Australia from sharing local and international news on Facebook. That would leave a lot of keyboard warriors with a lot of spare time. To get more on this developing story, we now cross to our very own info warrior, Alex James.
So this News Media Bargaining Code aims to address the power imbalances between digital media platforms and media businesses. Seems innocent enough, right? Maybe even a useful change in stopping social media giants benefiting from journalists' hard work for free. But when you dig just below the surface, you'll discover something much more alarming. Google and Facebook have predictably opposed these new measures, with Facebook even threatening to cut Australian news content from its platform altogether. But here's the issue. When Australians aren't flicking through the headlines, they're searching up things like bottle shops near me, or cure for a hangover, or how to get red wine out of carpet. So if news access is minimised, clearly this is all an elaborate ploy by the government to dumb us down using alcohol. Don't believe me? This has been going on for years. Take, for instance, how every other country seems to view Australians as friendly, lovable drunks. But is this just a naturally arising stereotype? Or is it a more sinister idea peddled by the government to push us towards binge drinking, like a self-fulfilling prophecy? Or consider how Canadians enjoy milk, nutritious, bone-building milk, in bags. But what do we put in our easily accessible bags? That's right, alcohol. Or even more recently, the concerted effort from governments around the globe to encourage people to drink Australian wine. There are entire ad campaigns for this. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. It's obvious it is just an attempt by the government to dumb us down in preparation for the upcoming COVID vaccine rollout. Don't fall for it. Don't be a sheep. Keep reading the news, or soon you'll appear in it.
We'll be sure to get Alex breathalyzed. In the meantime, we're off to a quick break. Welcome back. When Fifth Harmony released its song Work From Home back in 2016, it's fair to say their definition of work was a bit more liberal than rostered ours. Fast forward a few years and virtually the whole world is working remotely. And the title of the song is A Way of Life, minus the bedroom innuendo. But while we all enjoyed this change in the office environment, now things have started to fall apart, much like Fifth Harmony itself. So now, to get more on this ergonomics in the home workspace, we cross to our careers advisor, Employed.
Well, Tavleen, now that Victoria has become Australia's new favourite, relatively COVID-free child, the workforce has started to go back to its 9-to-5 grind at the office. That's right, no more pantless Zooms for you, Chad, because now that's a HR violation. But I know that many of you TikToking chai-sipping millennials had some serious hashtag goals for the work from home period. But now that may finally be coming to an end, let's look at all of those and laugh at your serious lack of hashtag motivation. For instance, it may be time to stop snacking at your workstation, lest you lose your pet in a sea of dishes, Monster Energy drink cans, and overbearing parental supervision. Speaking of pets, whilst it might at first have been nice to see your best friend every day, I know I speak for everyone on the Zoom call when I say it may be time to detach yourself from your anxious, overly attached chihuahua now. Pets and work don't mix, guys. We can't all be Elle Woods. The working from home period gave us some serious time to work on ourselves, and I'm sure many of you had some great personal development planned. But by personal development, I don't mean practicing that new TikTok dance in the mirror, Susan. With all that free time, I'm sure many of you thought that you'd be coming out of quarantine the same way Chris Evans came out of that pod in Captain America. But 12 Uber Eats orders later, and your yoga mat has a resident spider living in it, and your body is screaming for something, maybe, I don't know, a vegetable? You call yourself a progressive generation, but we aren't progressing anywhere if the best you can do from home is burning that piece of broccoli. Whatever your goals were, it's clear that we can all come out of 2020 with a little bit of hope, even if that hope is finally seeing the sun again. And whilst others may forget your quarantine goals, I will never let you ignore those resolutions. More of us need to hold you accountable and show you how those in charge run thin. Well, at the very least, stop with the TikTok dances. Back to you, Tavleen.
Thanks for the sage advice, Em. Now, our summer episode would be nothing without mentioning the holidays. But for many Australians, plans to vacation interstate had to be postponed, if not cancelled. The cluster of COVID cases in the New South Wales suburb of Avalon meant New Year's Eve's plans had to be cancelled for many Australians. I know, a dead Sydney nightlife? Impossible.
Unfortunately, singing, dancing, speaking loudly are all accelerants for transmitting the virus, and therefore those activities obviously are not allowed.
But the problem wasn't over with cases popping up in Brisbane, and that too some cases of the more contagious UK strain, which led to many states shutting their borders off to Brisbaneites. Here to help us navigate how to vacation in this era where borders shut down with mere hours notices is our millennial correspondent, Emily.
Hi, welcome back to I'm a Millennial, Get Me Out of Here. No, seriously, get me out of here, because after the year we've had, I think we deserve a vacation that is virus-free. But is that even possible in 2021? Look, the virus is still ravaging most of the globe, and with strict quarantine rules, you can basically cancel any plans you have for international travel. But what about interstate? Well, ask anyone who had to cancel their Byron Bay New Year's party and then postpone their Brisbane vacation afterwards. 2021's travel plans are just as unpredictable as US politics. Sure, you can book your flights, cross your fingers and hope you don't get stuck in another state's viral outbreak. Or you can stay at home. And you can literally do this for any holiday. Think about it. Is anything more anxiety-inducing than having to spend time with your family during the holidays? Do you actually enjoy pretending to like your brother-in-law's cooking? Or hearing your aunt go on long, convoluted stories about the good old days? Or, God forbid, having to talk about politics with your family? No. From now on, from Christmas, New Year's, Easter, heck, even birthdays, you're going to be taking this virus seriously and not wanting to risk anyone else's health. Just use this excuse and you'll be able to cancel a few plans. Or perhaps you want to take a vacation to have some alone time. You can still do that at home. Want to go somewhere tropical? Improvise.
It's like I'm in the Bahamas.
Want to visit significant cultural sites? It's like I'm already there. Perhaps you just want to let loose and party. Sure, you don't get to go on your dream vacation that you've been yearning all year for, but as you can see, with just a few modifications, you can have the exact same experience at home. Back to you, Tavleen.
You are living the dream, Emily. But across the Pacific, the American dream has turned into complete and utter chaos. Although Trump lost the elections to Biden, he could take solace in the fact that he had his Twitter megaphone with which to blast out messages to his 80+ million followers. Until he couldn't. Because Twitter, along with many other social media giants, banned Trump. And for Trump, Twitter was his most beloved tool to talk to people. In fact, whenever he had to share anything with the world, like the fact that he had coronavirus, he did it via Twitter. The move to ban Trump on Twitter came after the US Capitol riots, where Twitter felt that the tweets that Trump had made incited or urged his followers to move on to a rally that resulted into a violent assault on the Capitol Hill and 5 tragic deaths. Now he's a presidential pariah who cannot tweet but does have access to nuclear codes, despite a second impeachment. Back at home, we may not have a Bill of Rights, but we do have some staunch supporters of some certain freedoms. With Treasurer Josh Frydenberg and Deputy Prime Minister Michael McCormack not all that happy with Twitter's removal of Trump. But Trump wasn't the only one to mix celebrity status and politics, with Kanye West running a failed campaign for President of the United States in which he promised to run America like Wakanda, which, to be honest, might sound pretty good to Americans right about now. But that wasn't the only troubling news for the rapper who's rumored to be getting a divorce from reality star Kim Kardashian. Oh well, just like Kim Ye, it's time for a break. Welcome back again. Well, after enduring everything that was last year, coronavirus, systemic racism, J.K. Rowling ruining our collective childhoods, it's safe to say 2020 was one for the books. Luckily though, 2021 is here, and inside of a raging mess of a dumpster fire outside of a candidate for president rally that was 2020, it's worth taking a pause and looking back at the year and just seeing what all it was. And here to do just that with me is our Culture Wars correspondent, Penelope Cole.
Thanks, Tavleen. Right from the start, 2020 came out swinging. Back in January, Australia was devastated by some of the worst bushfires on record. Over 46 million acres of land were destroyed, ruining over 3,500 homes and devastating communities. So you betcha, the culture warriors came out to play. Despite the overwhelming scientific evidence that global warming worsens the risk of bushfires by 30%,
Deputy Prime Minister Michael McCormack said this to those who acknowledge the role of climate change in this disaster.
Well, they don't need the ratings of some pure, enlightened and woke capital city greenies at this time when they're trying to save their homes.
The Deputy Prime Minister does make a good point here. Woke inner city lefties yelling about climate change probably doesn't even help the people who are suffering, considering they can't even hear them due to the sounds of bushfires caused by decades of political inability on climate change.
Staying with January, how can we forget Meghan Markle and her husband Ed Sheeran, no, Ron Weasley, Prince Harry, split from the royal family and decided to step down as senior royals.
The move shocked many, with reactions from this to this.
Now we gotta address the elephant: social distancing on the other end of the room, coronavirus. First recorded in Australia on the 25th of Jan, it was without a doubt the most important issue of 2020.
And when it comes to important issues, people have a lot of opinions. Now, while there's a lot of memorable bad takes, who can forget when Sam Newman perfectly understood Australia's priorities when he protested against the government's interference on his fundamental human right to play golf? Sam, definitely not your best, but certainly by far not your worst. 2020 wasn't all COVID though. It managed to squeeze in a once-in-a-generational reckoning of racial injustice.
Sparked by the tragic death of George Floyd at the hands of police officers, millions of people took to the streets in protest, demanding an end to systemic racism. And while we truly admire the courage of those who did come out on the streets, you have to appreciate the bravery of those who, without actively participating in any protest or changing their behavior in any way, put up this black image with the hashtag Black Lives Matter and felt like they were supporting the cause on Instagram. Truly inspiring work.
Now, 2020 also had some political crises, starting with the attempted assassination of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Now, while some rushed to accuse Vladimir Putin of orchestrating the poisoning, due to his history of violence and corruption, that doesn't sound like something Putin would do. On a completely unrelated note, Putin then passed a law giving him complete criminal immunity for life. Wait a minute.
2020 wasn't all bad in terms of politics though. How can we forget Biden defeating Trump in the November elections?
And Trump didn't take that loss well, claiming the election was rigged and then allegedly inciting an attack on the US Capitol building.
Well, that was technically 7 days into 2021,
but who can ignore US democracy collapsing because of a reality TV star turned president's temper tantrum? That sounds pretty 2020 to me.
And how can we forget sport? Last year, Olympics got cancelled, and in the beginning of the year, Australian Open got postponed, and cricket test series were not in the news just for their remarkable plays or the flawed fielding by the Aussies, but also because of racial allegations at the SCG.
There was a lot happening on the ground, Kathleen, but it wasn't all just sport.
You know what? I've got to say this. It looks like the clear winner of 2020 was the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison.
That's right, Kathleen. Scott Morrison was a cut above his competition this year. He didn't try to poison any opposition leaders, and he definitely didn't try to start a coup in his own country.
In a year like 2020, ScoMo looks pretty good in comparison to his counterparts. Well, on that note, it's time to say goodbye from our summer special team. You know what? We are outside today and not in a studio because we wanted to enjoy the Melbourne summer, the rain, and remind ourselves and hopefully you that freedom is finally here. And 2021 is going to be so much more different than 2020. Well, that's it from me. It is my last episode, but the struggle team is going to be alive and kicking into a new season, and hopefully so is Channel 31 if Minister Paul Fletcher allows. Saying goodbye, and as always, the struggle, it's real.